hand and get a mic. Start with Vince.
Dylan Sampson mentioned that Cam Selden probably asked more questions than he did as a freshman. Where is Selden in terms of picking things up and really getting what you guys want from him this early?
He's doing a really good job right now, just for the standpoint of understanding what we want. Cam's baseline coming in was very, very low. And the beauty of him is he's been able to come in the spring, learn what we're going through, and now what that's going to do is going to help him as he progresses into the summer. But from a baseline standpoint, he was at kind of the bottom of the spectrum, and as you see, each and every practice, he's getting a little bit better understanding what we're doing. Really been excited just to see him grow. Every practice is something new that he's learning, some new technique or some new thing that he's not seen before. Just for the simple fact of his high school program, smaller school, so he's really been learning not just football-wise, but also, too, how to acclimate himself into, the basic things that we do.
The last couple of scrimmages, Heupel had talked about Deshaun Bishop and how his understanding of the offense has really been developing these last few spring practices. Where has he impressed you most?
Man, I tell you one thing, Deshaun has done a really good job of just getting his foot in the ground and going vertical. Like the philosophy, the velocity that he runs the ball with, getting downhill. He's a downhill runner. He's not a naturally big guy. He's not a 230-pound kid. But one thing he really does, he runs the ball physical. I think you saw the same things in high school from him. You saw a guy that he got downhill, he broke a lot of tackles. The knack for avoiding the big hits, he has a knack for doing that, and that's really good for him.
What do you think Dylan Sampson gained by actually playing as a freshman? How different is he now from a year ago?
Really, it's like night and day. From the protection standpoint, we all knew that Dylan had to come along and continue to grow just from a protection standpoint. Like you can see right now where his eyes start from a progression standpoint, the physicality that he does step up with and the power that he step up with because he's put on some weight. All that stuff getting thrown into the fire last year at those certain moments helped him develop and helped him grow. When you look at him, he's probably way further ahead than any guy that we've had here, going into year two, to be honest with you, more so than the Jabaris and the Jalen Wrights, just for the simple fact he got a chance to probably play a few more snaps, had a little bit more success in big moments than anything else. And I think that's really a compliment to why you want to get those guys as much time as possible, on the field early. And, he was a guy, he didn't come in the spring either. So for him to come in, process the information, learn the system, probably after about 8th or 9th practice of fall camp last year, we knew he was going to be a guy that could help us at some point in time throughout the season.
When you have a couple of young backs like you have Cam and Deshaun, how do you manage those guys from a standpoint of they're getting a certain amount of play right now because Jabari's not here and Jalen's been out, and then when you get to fall camp, those guys are back. And so how do you handle them mentally? Because, they're getting a certain taste of it now that they may not get come August or September.
The beauty of playing the running back position, a lot of times all this stuff works out. And I think you approach it right now in the spring where you're trying to figure out, okay, what Deshaun Bishop does well, what does Cam Selden do well? And then after that, you can have a chance in the summertime to continue to grow whatever they do well and really continue to work on their deficiencies. Now when you start to enter the fall camp, now you already kind of got an idea of what the Jabaris and the Jalens do well. So now it's time to try to implement those guys within the course of your offense, schematically wise, can a guy like Cam Selden catch the ball extremely well out the backfield? Is there a place for him within our offense? One thing, the running back position, it's always going to be bumps and bruises. Just the violence of the position already. It's always going to be guys that have nicks and bumps, and they go down for 2 or 3 practices or maybe 2 or 3 games. So everybody always has to be ready to play. Your time is going to come. We try to keep those guys as focused as possible, but understanding a role on special teams is going to be important. It's a very competitive room now, and that's good. Iron sharpens iron, and they're going to have a chance to continue to grow and develop. But they got to understand, they got to put pressure on us as coaches to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be, to make it hard for me to just say, hey, this one guy stays in the game, or even these 2 guys stay in the game. So continue to put pressure on me as a coach by doing what you're supposed to do on the field.
Coach, looking at Jabari and Jalen, sort of bigger picture, having coached them for a couple of years now, what was in the offseason overall, what did you want to see? What's the next step for those guys? Jabari going into his senior season, Jalen going into his junior season?
You know, the biggest thing from Jabari, which he addressed, you know, in January, was getting his shoulder and trying to get healthy. You know, he's been down this whole spring, which has been good for him. He's put on a little bit more mass, especially in his lower body. You look at his lowers, you know, he's continued to get stronger, more explosive. I think Jalen Wright needed to grow as an inside zone runner. Really between the tackles, getting more comfortable in between those noises, you know, hitting the ball downhill, don't bounce as much, things like that. Reduction from a standpoint of don't take the big hits. And I think Jalen, you know, he hasn't practiced as much as I would have liked him to, but he has surely grown. Those 6 or 7 practices that he did practice, he was looking like the best version that we've ever seen him.
Where are you shaping out in the position overall in short yardage runs?
You know, we still got one more addition that hasn't got here yet, and I think that will definitely help us. But, you know, you look last year, just from 21 to 22, you know, our short yardage success really increased. I think it was a mindset. I do think it was those guys putting on a little more weight in the weight room. All that kind of stuff helped us. I mean, we got 3 dudes that have had success in the system, and, you know, even in those short yardage situation or tight in the goal line situations, all of them been able to push the pile forward and show that they keep their feet driving on contact. They run with a certain type of physicality that we address. So it's not always about weight. It's not always about size. The biggest thing is the mentality that they approach it with and understanding the situation in each and every snap.
You talk about the room being different from when you guys got here. Do you think it, because of the added depth, that when, you know, Jabari's not out there and, of course, Jalen's been out the back part of spring here, and they see Dylan, that it's a little more like, you know, it makes them a little more chomping at the bit to get back to the practice field because, you know, you've got other guys nipping at their tails?
No question. Iron sharpens iron. And that's a good problem to have because we want you to understand when you get in there in the game and you get your opportunity, you got to take full advantage of it. That's what I mean by, like, keep putting pressure on me, you know, like from a standpoint of I got to make sure I play the best person and you got to do your job to do what you're supposed to do. You know, Dylan Sampson's had a really good spring, you know, last scrimmage. He broke out some big runs. But now what you're seeing now, the Cam Seldons, the Deshaun Bishops, one more bodies going to be added to the room when we get in the fall. Like, it's going to be a tough room to get on the field, but that's good. You know, that's a good problem to have because you understand, like, every rep, every situation is going to be super important. You got to take advantage of every opportunity that you have. I can't tell you what play is going to be the big play. Every play is going to be important to everybody that plays.
With these young guys, how much they wouldn't be getting these reps, as we talked about already. How much do these reps help them develop more quickly than they would have if they were behind a Jabari or a Jalen Wright?
No doubt, it expedites the process. You know, one thing that has been going on is a guy like Jalen Wright has not been able to practice as much. So what that has done is now everybody reps that are behind him start to increase. So now Cam Seldon, Deshaun Bishop, those guys right now are taking way more reps than they probably would have ever taken if guys like, you know, Jabari or Jalen Wright would have been healthy. And that just expedites the process of their growth. So now when they go into the summer, when they go into fall camp, now they have an opportunity to understand what's going on and operate within the course of the offense. You know, you have to be a great processor of information in this system. We're signaling the plays from the sideline. You got to be able to dissect, process, get your cleat set in the ground, and go play fast. And the only way to really do that is to get quality reps. Cam Seldon needs to play football. As much football as he can possibly play, getting on the field, walkthroughs, all those different things that try to help expedite that learning process, all those things are critical for him to be able to help us in the fall.
Last season, obviously, it was a pass-heavy offense, but this year you got a lot of returners and Jabari Smalls, and you have a few budding stars as well. How do you envision the run game to be woven into the offense this season?
Well, you know, Coach Housley and Coach Ellerby, they're going to do a great job combining, collaborating, and always, you know, the foundation of what we do is always going to be to run the football. Now, obviously, we're in a position that we got more bodies, more quality bodies, I feel like, than we've ever had before. So, you know, we're going to always play our role. You know, whether that means we're going to carry the ball 50 times collectively as a group, whether that means sometimes it's 20. But, like, our role from a protection standpoint, carrying the football, like, it's kind of whatever the game dictates. There's going to be some games where we have to carry the load a little bit more than others. It could maybe some situations that we end up in the course of the game that now we're running the football probably more than we normally would. So that stuff is all dictated off the game situation.
Coach, with Deshaun, he obviously played a lot of running back in high school, was really prolific. I don't know how much pass blocking he did. Where is he at in terms of his pass pro? Is he a pretty typical freshman, or has he picked up things pretty quickly on that front?
You know, I've really been impressed. He's done a really good job, not only of picking it up, but showing the physicality piece that you want. Deshaun's a tough guy. anytime you run the ball for the amount of yards he ran in high school, you got some toughness to you because he was their workhorse. And like when he goes and he attacks the defender and goes to protect, like he shows that physicality. That's something you don't have to worry about. Now, where his eyes are supposed to go, the technique on how to get there, all that part is something he's going to have to continue to learn and grow. But like I tell you right now, like, he's not afraid to stick his face in there, stick his face in the fan and go attack people. Thank you, Coach. No problem. Thank you, guys.